What if I told you that there's a fifth Hobbit who should have been part of the main group in The Lord of the Rings, but Peter Jackson cut him out entirely? And the craziest part, this Hobbit actually faced the Nazgûl, 3 of them, long before Frodo ever reached Bree, and the movies never even mention him. Welcome back to You Shall Not Scroll, the place where we dive deep into Tolkien's Legendarium. Today we're talking about a Hobbit who helped launch the entire quest, a Hobbit who risked his life for the Shire, a Hobbit whose bravery shaped events the movies never showed. Today we're talking about the forgotten Hobbit of The Lord of the Rings, Fredegar Fatty Bolger. Fredegar Bolger was a good friend of Frodo Baggins. He was a cousin of Pippin, a descendant of the old Took. He had a younger sister who married Merry, and he was part of the tight-knit group of young Shire hobbits who stuck together long before the Ring adventure began. Tolkien describes him as friendly, dependable, and yes, a bit of a glutton. That's actually why they call him Fatty Bolger. But don't let the nickname fool you. This Hobbit did something that was far braver than he had right to. Because when Frodo finally left the Shire, someone had to stay behind. That someone was Fredegar Bolger. In the books, there's a whole storyline called A Conspiracy Unmasked. It's where Merry, Pippin, Sam, and yes, Fredegar reveal that they've known about Frodo's plans all along. Funny enough, Sam was their chief, having the most access to Frodo and his conversations. So they conspired to help Frodo without him even knowing. They even knew about the ring. Merry had seen Bilbo use it to become invisible and avoid the Saxel Baggins. After they revealed their plans, Frodo then explained his situation with the Black Riders and what happened with Farmer Maggot. At this point, they knew Frodo had to leave the Shire and his journey would be extremely dangerous. They also knew they were never going to let him walk off alone. Their goal was simple: get Frodo safely out of the Shire and confuse anyone following him. Here's where Fatty Bolger comes in. In the books, Frodo moved out of Bag End and into Crickhollow to start his process of leaving the Shire as quietly as possible. He wanted to move closer to the east borders of the Shire so he could leave without people noticing. Those in Hobbiton found it strange that Frodo sold Bag End, and some would say that this sale started the Shire's downfall and eventual scouring. But they accepted that an old Frodo, lonely without Bilbo, was leaving to be near the other side of his family in Buckland. Interestingly, Frodo was moving out of a hobbit hole and into a house, one of the Brandybuck's guest house that was no longer inhabited and couldn't be seen from the road. It did feel like a hobbit hole though. So, the hobbits, including Fredegar, stayed with Frodo on his last night in Bag End and celebrated his birthday with him before they all left the next day. Where Fredegar comes in clutch in this plan is that he agreed to pretend to be Frodo living in the new Crickhollow house. This would keep the inquisitive folk from finding out Frodo had left and give his friends more time. He even had some of Frodo's clothes to wear. He literally stayed behind his bait so that the enemy would think Frodo was still there. This is not the story of a coward. This is the Hobbit making a dangerous, calculated sacrifice for his friends. On a side note, Fatty Bolger, with help from Merry, set up Frodo's new house with all of his things, even though they knew Frodo wouldn't be living there. They went through all of that effort just to comfort Frodo for the night they all stayed over and they had their baths and mushrooms. That's just a good friend. The morning after their baths and mushrooms, Fredegar rode with the Hobbit towards the old forest, but he was terrified of going into it, so that's as far as he went. This is partly why he volunteered to stay back and not go on the journey. He had heard tales of the forest and creatures who dwelt within and would rather take his chances with the Black Riders. Of course, he had no idea how much worse they were. So he went back to Frodo's house in Crickhollow and waited. That's when one night, while Frodo and the other hobbits were in Bree, a darkness fell on Buckland, and Fredegar had a feeling of fear that would not let him sleep. He looked outside and saw shadows move. Then the front gate opened and closed, but no one could be seen. Terror overtook him and he locked the door. And then there came the sounds of horses being silently led down the lane. 3 Nazgûl appeared. One came to the door, while the others went to either side of the house. Fredegar saw that the Nazgûl at the door had a drawn sword, and it struck the door soft but heavy and said, "Open in the name of Mordor." Then the Nazgûl hit the door again and it burst asunder, and they passed swiftly inside. That's when a horn was heard nearby among the trees. Tolkien wrote, "It rent the night like fire on a hilltop." As soon as the Nazgûl headed for the house, Fredegar knew he had to run or he would die. He ran out the back door and reached the next house over a mile away. Frodo had picked the house because it was so secluded, but I'm sure Fredegar wasn't too happy about that right then. When he reached the neighbor, he was just babbling that he didn't have it and that it wasn't him. After a little bit, they decided something was wrong, an invasion from the old forest perhaps. And for the first time in 100 years, the Brandybucks were blowing the Horn-call of Buckland. The last time that happened was when the Brandywines froze and White Wolves crossed to attack. The horns were being answered all over Buckland, and with the whole community roused, the Black Riders left. But they now knew the ring was no longer in the Shire. Tolkien wrote, "The Black Riders rode like a gale to the North Gate. Let the little people blow." They then rode down the guards at the gate and vanished from the Shire. The only reason Merry, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo aren't hunted down immediately is because Fatty Bolger held the line long enough for them to escape. This moment is crucial to the plot, and most movie-only fans never even heard about it. So why did Peter Jackson cut him? There are three main reasons. First, he needed to streamline the story. The early chapters of the Fellowship of the Ring include several events that the movie skips, including Frodo's move to Crickhollow, the Conspiracy of Friends, and the Old Forest. All of these scenes include Fatty Bolger at some point. Since Peter Jackson removed those chapters for pacing, Fatty vanished right along with them. Second, the film focuses on the traveling hobbits. Jackson wanted the audience to follow one tight group of friends: Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. For most people, it was their first time meeting these characters, and the less they had to remember, the better. Anyone who didn't go on the quest was mostly pushed out of the main narrative. And lastly, setting up Fredegar would have had little payoff for the story they decided to tell, since they took out the main parts he was involved with. One thing Peter Jackson did though was he took some of Fredegar's scenes and used them in other ways. For example, he moved the attack on Crickhollow to the Prancing Pony. Since the Nazgûl never attacked the inn in the books, he was able to combine two scenes and save time. The film simply chose momentum over lore accuracy. Even so, it's hard not to feel like his absence leaves a gap in the Fellowship's origin story. So what happened to Fredegar? Protecting Buckland from the Nazgûl had to be his most heroic moment, right? Personally, I don't think so. That happened at the end of the story, in The Return of the King, when Saruman, as Sharky, took over the Shire and became a tyrant. That's when Fredegar became part of the resistance movement and led a band of rebels hidden in the Broken Boars by the hills of Scouring. He helped stand up to the ruffians, though he was eventually captured. He was smoked out by them and imprisoned in Lockholes, which were old storage tunnels at Mickle Delving. The first day after the Battle of Bywater, where the hobbits took back the Shire, Frodo rode to Mickle Delving to set the prisoners free. Fredegar was one of the first they found, and he was fatty no more. Pippin teased him and said that he should have gone with him, and Fredegar commented on Pippin's new height, thanks to the Ent draft. Personally, I like that Fredegar stood up to Saruman and his thugs while the others were away. He didn't have the experience the four main hobbits had, but he still stepped up and protected his community. He may not have left the Shire with the others, but he did fight for it when the time came. I also like that at the end of it all, he never lost his hobbit sense of humor and immediately joked with Pippin upon his release. So, what's Fredegar Fatty Bolger's legacy? He was the hobbit who stayed behind, the hobbit who protected Frodo's secret, the hobbit who stood face to face with the Nazgûl and lived to warn the others. He may not have journeyed to Rivendell or stood at the Black Gate, but he played a part that mattered, one of loyalty, courage, and friendship. And that's exactly the kind of story we love here on You Shall Not Scroll. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Tolkien's world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.